Welcome to Beyond Ready, guiding youth to grow, thrive, and find their spark in a world of change. The podcast where we explore the stories, insights, and experiences of youth development through the lens of 4-H here in Douglas County, Kansas.
4-H, the nation's largest youth organization, empowers 6 million young people through numerous hands-on learning experiences to build a ready generation.
Sharing stories from local clubs, project groups, and volunteers, we'll explore how 4-H is creating change, building stronger communities, and equipping today's youth to meet tomorrow's challenges.
So join us, whether you're a proud 4-H alum, an active club member or volunteer, or simply looking to learn more about the world of 4-H. Let's get started.
Welcome back, everybody, to our Beyond Ready monthly podcast. Today, our episode is super special as we have a very special guest with us today. I'm Nickie Harding, the 4-H Extension Agent here in Douglas County, and we're going to talk a little bit today about the 4-H Thrive model. The 4-H Thrive model is a research-based approach that guides everything we do in the 4-H community, helping young people find their spark, develop a growth mindset, build strong relationships, and gain the skills they need to succeed in life. Youth are supported in many ways. They don't just participate, but they thrive. Our guest today is a perfect example of that. From discovering his spark in 4-H as a young member, to earning scholarships, completing vet school, and now giving back as a 4-H ambassador leader and county fair veterinarian, Dr. Matthew Kelso is exactly what it looks like to thrive through 4-H. Welcome, Mr. Kelso.
Thank you for having me, Nickie. 4-H is always a big part of my life and continues to be at this point, and so I'm excited to share some thoughts and share what my 4-H experience looked like.
We were getting ready for today and was just thinking about the 4-H program as a whole, and we obviously just completed the county fair, and so we're really able to see a lot of our 4-H alumni as adults giving back in many ways. But let's start with your spark. So the Thrive model begins with helping youth find what excites and motivates them. So could you share what your spark was as a 4-H'er and how you discovered it?
Yeah, so as I was thinking about this last night, I thought of spark as a little different than how I'd thought of it before. And spark is something that I've found is kind of changing throughout my time in 4-H. I remember one of the first things I did for the county fair, my first year as a 4-H'er, was I did bucket calves. And I had 2 little bottle calves my family got from the sale barn, Licorice and Jelly Bean. 7-year-old Matthew is wonderful at names.
I love it.
But I remember just falling in love with these calves. Unfortunately, Jelly Bean didn't make it. Unfortunately, that's the nature of bottle calves. That's why Mom and Dad had the wisdom to get 2. But Licorice made it to the county fair, and it was a wonderful project experience. It was my first project in 4-H, something I'd worked with since we got the calf in the early fall or early spring, late winter. And then I was able to show him off at the county fair. And that's where I kind of figured out that 4-H is about growing and sharing this wonderful project with the community. Moving in a little bit to elementary school, I think kind of my spark came from county camp out at the Rock Springs 4-H Center, where I made friends, got to do activities I'd not done before, and kind of evolved into more of the friendship rather than just taking care of myself and doing things for myself. And then into the teenage and high school years, getting to go to the different organizational events. So in teenage years, Discovery Days out in Manhattan, I definitely found my spark, and that's where I fell in love with Kansas State University. Started preparing myself. That's where I was going to get my education from. And I just knew that K-State was the place for me, and Discovery Days helped me find that. Just all these great experiences along the way. Each one provided a different spark that helped me get to kind of where I am today.
That's a great example of that, finding your spark. And I totally agree. As you grow through that 4-H program, you kind of eventually, depending on what activities you take part in, you definitely find new sparks. I also feel like something that I've really witnessed this last year with several of our kids that are actually transitioning from that younger 4-H'er now as that role model and really taking advantage of the opportunities at the county level and beyond. I can see that spark. I can see as we go to events and activities, they're like, hey, this is pretty cool. And sometimes it's, hey, I'm away from home for a couple days, and just where they're meeting new people, and they'll meet kids at lots of different events, and then they'll go to CIA, for example, Citizenship in Action, and then they go to Discovery Days, and just being able to meet new friends, and then finding commonality between them that then sets them on some kind of path, whether, it's making sure they go to the same events every year to eventually maybe going to the same college and being on that same career path.
Absolutely. I was a floor counselor for Discovery Days for a number of years. Our job is basically making sure kids stay in their rooms at night and not be teenagers. But it was always so interesting to me. It was about a 4-day event. I think it's a little bit shorter now, but it was a 4-day event when I was volunteering with it. And it was so interesting to watch the evolution of the youth throughout the events. Because on the first night, your first floor meeting, you're going to have half your floor's been here before. They know what it's about. They have their friends. They're lively. They're chatting. You got to keep them quiet and go over stuff. Then you have about half your floor that it's maybe their first or second time, and they don't really know what to expect, what they've gotten themselves into, and what the week has in store for them. And every year without fail, by the end of those 4 days, the whole floor was like the kids that had been there their whole lives. They all made wonderful friends. They were all chatty. They were all the rowdy group that I had to keep quiet just to go over simple information for the event to keep it running smoothly. And then it becomes, all right, guys, you really do have to get in your rooms at the end of the night.
Yes.
And it's just that evolution from going to bed right on time to, please, can we stay out 5 minutes later? It blew my mind every time, and just as a testament to kids finding their spark at events like that.
Yeah. Yes, I love those opportunities for our kids. Also, while you were talking, I was thinking about, you started off with bucket calves. I find that a lot of times, kids will start off with several projects, and they eventually narrow those projects down to just a few, as they get older, for multiple reasons. Time, maybe they tried something and it wasn't their spark, right? But then I feel like by the time those kids are getting to the end of their 4-H career, over time they have definitely narrowed in on what their spark is and then want to continue that on a path. So you started out with bucket calves. Did you have multiple projects that you were a part of and eventually found one or two that you really focused in on?
Yeah, so I was actually a little bit of the opposite of that. Mom was a 4-H'er, and so she told me you can pick 2 projects for your first year. And so I did a bucket calf and I did a rocket. Both had its ups and downs. My rocket definitely crashed when it shot it off. A lot of tears were had, but it was a great learning experience. And then every year, Mom and Dad would let me add 1 or 2 more projects. And so I feel like throughout my 12 years in 4-H, I touched on just about every project area. And you're absolutely right. I definitely picked up on ones that they were good for me, like the shopping with style project. It was good for me to learn about clothes, but it was not my spark.
Yeah.
My brother, that was absolutely his thing. He's still who I call when I have to get dressed up for a meeting or something.
Yeah.
Just was not and still is not for me. But I got my experience in all the different areas, kind of figure out kind of the more sciencey, animal-involved projects were the ones. I did space tech for 12 years, doing a rocket every year. I moved from the bucket calf into the beef project. I did add llamas and rabbits along the way, but beef is really where that passion lies, and that transitioned into my career today.
Very cool. Very cool. Speaking of beef cattle, talk about your love for animals, science, or public speaking, something that fueled your passion now.
Yeah. And so I remember this has been my 2nd or 3rd year in 4-H. I had a bucket calf named Zoe. Beautiful little premature calf, white baldy face, long eyelashes, just a face anyone could fall in love with. And that year, the Lawrence Journal World came, and I happened to be working with her, and they talked to me, and they took some pictures of me and Zoe, and we ended up being in the paper the next day, which to a 8 or 9-year-old kid, that's a amazing accomplishment. You're very proud of yourself there. The rest of that fair, Zoe, she sat on an end of an aisle, so anyone that walked through the beef barn walked by Zoe, and she just had one of those faces that everyone would fall in love with. So I got to spend a lot of that fair just talking about Zoe, talking about my project, what limited beef knowledge I had as an 8 or 9-year-old, but I quickly realized that this is something I really enjoyed, something I really enjoyed sharing with people, and kind of started figuring out, even pretty early in life, that animals were going to be involved in my life at some point. And so not only was I sharing my project, 8 or 9-year-old Matthew didn't realize I was also working on my public speaking skills, my community engagement skills, things that looking back on it now are really important and foundational for who I am now and what the 4-H program is all about.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. I really, truly appreciate that 4-H creates a space for youth to explore so many different areas and then find what truly works for them. Another key piece of our Thrive model is belonging. So 4-H aims to create a safe and inclusive space where all youth feel important. So what did that sense of belonging look like for you growing up through the program?
Yeah, the belonging was really important, and I think from multiple standpoints. The first is being with a pretty like-minded group of people. 7 to 9-year-olds in your 4-H club that have not been exposed to this. You're all kind of going through new new things for the first time. Same at things like county camp. Maybe this is your first time away from home, your first time going canoeing, your first time shooting rifles. But I think it's important that you're getting to do these things for the first time with other people that are doing it for the first time. I didn't realize it at the time, but when you're kind of struggling together, you're all doing something new, it's a lot better than you're doing something new, but you're seeing someone else succeeding at it. 4-H did make a safe space there, but I think the other thing is it allowed us to fail as well. I can certainly think of some projects along the way where maybe I got a red or a white ribbon at the fair. That safe space for me to learn and grow was really important and to help me continue on down the road.
Yes. I see certain events, certain activities, and 4-H members being members of, they're all across the county, right? We're not just always with the same group of people like we are in school. I really love to see those kids when they get together for a project meeting or go to 4-H camp or participate in our Citizenship Washington Focus program. When those kids come together, it doesn't matter if they go to school in Lawrence, Baldwin, Eudora, Lecompton, they come together and they have so much fun and they're all learning together at the same time, and they are all completely comfortable and feel, like they're having a great time and feel included.
Right, and I think that applies to every level of 4-H, whether that be the local club level all the way up through the state and national level. As I was kind of jotting down some thoughts for this podcast last night, I had two friends that really came to mind, Kane and June. I served on the state 4-H Youth Council with them my senior year of high school, and they were people that you only saw 3 times a year when you got to these major state events, but you formed those connections. And to this date, I don't want to think about how long I'm out of the program now, but I still talk to Kane and June almost multiple times a week, and they're still a big part of my life and very important to me, as well as the local 4-H friends. But even the ones you don't see routinely like you would at a monthly 4-H club meeting, they can still leave a lasting impact on your life.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Which this brings us into our next part of the Thrive model, that relationship and engagement piece of it. So these are about youth being actively involved in learning and having positive, caring adults that guide them. Sometimes our kiddos have adult mentors, and sometimes it is youth mentors that impact their journey along the way. So who were some of your mentors who made an impact on your journey?
Yeah, so I definitely had I feel like this is going to be a long list of people, and there's probably some people I'm leaving out here, but I had a lot of both colleagues, people my age, teenagers older than me, as well as adults that were a big part of my life. I certainly had my county 4-H agent, Mark Flory, was who I had when I was in high school. He was a big part of when I was an ambassador, when I was on this county 4-H council. He definitely was a good guiding role for that. And then I really think about my time on the State Youth Leadership 4-H Council. The wonderful leaders, Beth Henshaw, Anna Muir, and Sarah Moss, who's now our State 4-H leader, definitely were wonderful, and to this day still great mentors to me. If I'm struggling with something with working with the ambassador team or something, Beth is definitely one of those people I'm calling and saying, hey, what am I doing here? What are we seeing with youth right now? What can I be doing differently to help them out? And so even in my time beyond 4-H, they've served as wonderful mentors in my life in general. And then you touched on another great part of 4-H is there is that peer-to-peer mentorship. I talked about Kane a little bit ago. He had served on the council for about 2 years before I joined, and so he had a lot of great institutional experience there. And so being a new member on the council, he was a great mentor to help us new members figure out what we're doing. We served on the CIA Citizenship in Action Committee, which is our annual event in Topeka that Nickie touched on earlier. And Kane did a wonderful job helping mentor the new members of the committee on how we can put together a great statewide event. And then one more person I have to definitely think is Sue Ashcraft. She was the ambassador advisor when I was an ambassador from, I want to say 2009 to 2012 when I was in my latter part of the 4-H career. And I'm privileged enough that she's one of my co-advisors for the ambassador program currently. And the number of lives she's touched and mine is definitely something to be reckoned with.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were always engaged in all areas of 4-H. So how did that hands-on involvement shape your skills and your confidence?
Yeah, one of the first ones that came to mind was actually something that never ended up getting off the ground. When I was president of the County 4-H Council here, I was also chairman of the Community Service Committee. And this is when we had the old pole barns on our fairgrounds, and every species kind of had a barn. And I pitched the idea of we should have a barn painting party. That year the barns were looking a little run down, and for whatever reason, there wasn't the funds in the county to get them taken care of that year. And I proposed that we perhaps consider undertaking that. And it never made it off the ground for multiple reasons. Too big of a project for a small group. Turns out there was lead paint that we had to consider and deal with. And these are all things that the 4-H parents brought to me. At the time, I took it very personally that my project was getting shut down and not getting off the ground. But looking back on it, it was a chance for me to reflect and think a little bit deeper about what all a project entails. So I think that's something that's been really foundational for me. Other areas of engagement were the county fair, getting to talk with the community members, as well as sharing even a project within the 4-H program with somebody that's not been involved in that project. That's a great chance to grow your project area. I talked about doing rocketry, making a rocket every year. When I first started in 4-H, there was always 40 to 50 rockets at the fair. And towards the end of my career, there was maybe only 10 to 15. And so that was something I'd always make it a point to go out of the way to talk about that project, as well as to talk to kids about it and kind of the skills and the fun of it, especially those that kind of have the science-based minds. And so I think that was important to help grow it. And then the last one I want to talk about is communication. I definitely remember giving my first project talk at the Eudora 4-H Club. I was 7 years old and I was talking about Legos. There were definitely tears involved, and Mom told me I was going to get up and I was going to give my project talk. That's the way it was going to be. And I got through it, and I remember there was a senior member, Ashley Moran, came up to me after the meeting, and junior, senior in high school came up to 7-year-old Matthew and said, "That was a really cool talk, and I'm really glad you gave that." That was the last time I had tears at a public speaking event. I definitely had been frustrated at public speaking before, but getting that first event under my belt and having somebody affirm for me that I was doing the right thing made that important to help me go on down the road to other public speaking events.
Yeah, that communications piece is key, and it is scary, super scary for our little people, and even sometimes for, our older 4-Hers, it is still scary. There was a 4-Her this year who was going to give her first official project talk at a 4-H meeting. It was about horses, and we had a lot of older members in that club that were also horse participants. And after she was done, she had a ton of questions after her talk. She did fabulous, but she was like, "I was just so nervous. All those big kids, I didn't want to say anything wrong, but all those big kids came up and were like, 'You did awesome,' So that confidence and that support for those communication pieces are important."
Right. And I don't think that's ever anything those older kids are going out of their way to doing. I just think that's what's ingrained in us as 4-Hers, that we support our colleagues, we support the littler people, and we make sure they know they're valued and it's a safe space for them to grow and develop their skills.
Yeah. Yes. Very good. Well, let's wrap up with the growth mindset. We've kind of covered this a little bit and the purpose of this component. 4-H teaches us that we can grow through effort and challenges. So how did 4-H prepare you for the challenges of vet school?
Yeah, so this is the one I put a lot of thought into last night. And one quote that came to mind on the first day of vet school orientation, the dean of the college, Dr. Ronnie Elmore, says, "You're about to start off on a journey, and a lot of people like to describe vet school as trying to sip water from a fire hydrant. The amount of information we're going to throw at you, the number of tests you're going to have, the number of lab practicums you're going to have over the next 4 years is going to blow away any expectation you have." And he was absolutely right. The amount of information in one semester of vet school was compared to maybe a year or two of undergrad. And so things I have to think back that helped me get to where I am today is my time management. I think of the summers where I maybe had 8 to 10 projects for the county fair and 3 different sets of animals. Wanted to have a llama, rabbits, and beef cattle. And if I didn't properly plan my time to work on each one of those projects, give them the time they deserved, I was going to be very disappointed in myself come county fair season, and I'd kind of only halfway done some things. And so that was very important, prioritizing 5 to 6 different classes for 5 to 6 different exams. And then the other thing is relationship building. At school, I had a class of about 115 people. And I knew maybe 5 or 6 of them, but you're thrown into this situation with 110 other people you've maybe never met before, and you're going to be spending 8 to 10 hours a day with them. And so you learn very quickly who they are, what they're about, who you're closer with, who you're not, but you do have a relationship with everybody there. I like to joke that vet school is kind of like a small town. You knew a little bit about everybody, and you knew what was going on in their lives, and that was just a consequence of being together so much. And then the last thing I do want to touch on is 4-H allowed me to fail, which I did have some struggles in veterinary school with a certain class and end up actually retaking the course. And because I'd have previous failures before, Yes, I was significantly distraught and concerned at the time, but I came back and was able to get an A in the class the second time I took it because I'd had previous experiences with failing before. And I feel if I didn't have those experiences, it would have been a much bigger challenge to go back and take that class a second time, approach it with a better mindset, make some changes, and still advance through the curriculum there. And so I think 4-H really brought a lot of things together to not only get me going, but to pick me back up when I struggled, and to get me going again.
Awesome. Very real world application there.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, you've truly come full circle, living proof of the 4-H Thrive model in action. So thanks so much for sharing your story and continuing to make a difference in our community. But before we go, do you have any advice you'd give to young 4-Hers who are just starting their journey or families thinking of joining 4-H?
Yeah, so I'm going to do this in two parts. I'll talk to the youth first. To the kids, just have fun with it. Whether you realize it or not, you're going to be learning things along the way, and that's great on down the road. But when you're 7 to 10 years old, just have a good time. Go to 4-H camp. Go throw rocks in the creek. Go enjoy the county fair and eat the cotton candy. Do all the fun things and just have a good time. The lessons will come later, and you'll realize everything you've been learning on down the road. And then to the parents, this would be the best decision for you and your family. You're going to grow closer with your youth. You're going to see your child or children grow in ways that are beyond your wildest dreams. 4-H really has a spot for everybody. Anytime I'm talking about 4-H with a parent or an older youth, one of the things I find myself coming back to saying is we truly have something for everybody. And if we don't, we can find a way to make it work.
Absolutely.
Any career interest, any hobby, any activity your child is interested in, we have a way to make that work in 4-H and help them grow through that.
Absolutely. Very good words. Thank you, Dr. Matthew Kelso, and thank you to our listeners for joining us today. If this story inspired you, be sure to share the episode and check out our Douglas County 4-H page to see how youth are thriving every day. You can also find information about the 4-H Thrive model in our show notes. Until next time, keep growing, giving, and thriving.
Thank you for listening to K-State Extension Douglas County's podcast. We hope you tune in again for not only more research-based information and resources you can trust, but also good conversation. Until next time.